Man, I think people they never understand context of conversations, and they come into a space and they go, they come in and they go, oh, was the election stolen? So,
Yeah, it's like we haven't had this conversation literally 10,000 times. But I want to talk about it again. Actually, there was fake ballots.
Yeah, it's retarded to bring up things like that in this type of context. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a code. It's a code to ask open-ended questions like that, basically.
yeah, I just don't. I mean, I do agree with the Hunter Biden thing a lot. Like, it's like, it's a, how many times can you try to make the connections that aren't there? If it's not going to work, you have to move on. It's just not great. I don't know. It's tiresome to, you know, watch Republicans get excited about, oh, I have this report coming out. It's going to be it's like, it's never going to fucking happen. And even if it does happen, there's not enough, like this whole charades that happened on the Democrats with the impeaching Trump. Like, he'll never be impeached because they're never going to get 2/3 of the Senate. So it's just like, move on. Like, let's.
Richard, we never. What's your thoughts on like the Nick Fuentes like AF movement? Like you talked to him a couple weeks ago or something.
Yeah, I talked to him last week. My thoughts on the current. I don't know where it's going right now. I think Nick Fuentes has like individualized himself or something, where he's a public figure and he's a comedian and he's a political voice, of some significance. And whether you like that or hate that, it just is what it is. I don't, I don't know about the movement. I mean, I think in a way it's going to get diffuse. Like in Fuentes mentioned this in one of his speeches, the same one where he called for like, we will fight the enemies of God and all that kind of stuff. He said, whenever you go to Turning Point USA or any of these groups, you have all these groypers who are working there. They're like the low-level employees or maybe someone in the middle management like listens to Nick or thinks Nick's funny or something. And that was a brag, of course, but I actually think it's true. And so I think they're like, it's like dilating or becoming thinner, but then it's becoming more widespread. It's not like an independent movement. And
Yeah,
I mean, you see this all over the place. Yeah, go ahead.
well, yeah, it's just I think that's largely because everybody that follows Nick, like, yeah, there's maybe like 4 people over the age of 25 that know about Nick Fuentes or like are fans of him, quote unquote. But everybody else seems to be pretty young, so there's kind of like no
Well,
actual political power, that they can wield yet.
well, to know about him or to like listen
I
to his
mean, I mean,
shows,
like him. I'm
there's a
obviously
difference
What's
there.
tons of people know him, but
so? What's the appeal to his content other than sort of the edginess to it? Is he very well read? Has he
Well,
has
hold
he
on,
like a
hold
mastery
on.
of the
Okay,
classics?
so first off, and one thing, the interview that I gave him, was it was a bit of a softball interview, you could say. Because I didn't actually, and I actually got some interesting information. I mean, he was talking about his personal interactions with Donald Trump. I thought that was fascinating. And you have to be, a guy who he likes and trusts for him to talk that way. If you're doing a hostile interview, you're not going to get tidbits like that. But I let him speak his piece and kind of feel comfortable and so on. And I'm not, I'll give a hostile interview to other people, but not him. But I guess what I was saying is, so there is this guy who I'm forgetting which paper he wrote for, but I believe it was the New York Times or something like that. And he wrote a piece on Tim Pool, and he just nailed it for me. He said that right-wing commentators are of 3 types. So there is the clown, and this is someone like Alex Jones is a clown. So you know that it's just total nonsense. but you're almost like in on the joke. You like want to let him go. You want to see him rip his shirt off, and you want to see him say something just totally ridiculous that you don't even take seriously yourself. But you're kind of like, keep going, Alex, because it's so much fun. And he is
like Tucker did with that interview with Alex.
That was a little much. I mean, I was cool with Nick Fuentes, but I wasn't like, Nick, why are you Jesus? I'm just like, I was this, I mean, that interview was on a next level of weird ass kissing. That interview bothered me. But anyway, the other type of conservative commentator is the thought leader. So that you will occasionally have these people who they'll analyze policy or law, politics, et cetera, et cetera. Like National Review is a thought leader magazine for decades. Probably not anymore. And then there's the reflector. And what the guy said, I thought it was like uncannily brilliant, is that, because I was saying this as well. I was like, why would anyone listen to Tim Pool? Like, I guess I kind of get it if he has an interesting guest on, and that's Joe Rogan's secret, is just to kind of like facilitate your guest. But the guy is a horrible commentator. Like, he gives you negative knowledge. He is clearly dumb, not educated. He's like Arrested Development. I could just go on. And he's not even charismatic. He's kind of like funny looking and just like, what the fuck is this? I can understand like listening to some blonde Fox News chick, like just saying basic talking points, because it's like, okay, I get it, but Tim Pool, what is going on? And everyone needs to, because it's like A's hire A's and B's, B's hire B's and C's, C's hire F's. And so Tim Pool surrounds himself with people who are just as like deluded and stupid as he is. So it is, I mean, I can't put into words the degree to which I just loathe that show. Never watched a full episode, just every single clip I see, I'm just like face palming. Anyway, he's a reflector. And so he reflects back to the audience themselves. So he's not haughty or above them and like telling them something they've never heard before, or like expressing an interesting thought or going into serious detail. He just is his audience. His audience are a bunch of dudes wearing beanie hats in summer and listening. I mean, and so I think Nick, to go back to Nick, I think Nick is a little bit of a blend between the clown and the mirror. So he is a bit of a clown. I mean, some of his monologues are just undeniably funny. I mean, even the whole "it's gay to have sex with men." I mean, that is funny. You can make of that what you will, or whatever. It's funny.
No, with women.
Oh, excuse me. It's gay to have sex with women. It's funny. That was a
Freudian slip, Richard.
Proving that I am in fact heterosexual, according to the Freudian method.
Yeah, but that type of stuff comes from Gavin McInnes, though. Let's keep it real. A lot of his ideas do, because like Gavin McInnes has been saying that type of thing for a long time, right? Like the gay life, like being single, going on.
No.
Nick's better than Gavin.
I'm not saying he's not better.
Did he actually say that though?
He said that. He's also just said funny things. Like I remember this riff from 6 months ago where he was like, we need fun dictators back. And I think the thread that connects all of them is that you're a dictator and you have a mustache. So really, we need to bring back
he does
the
lie
mustache.
on the.
It's funny. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
And then he grew out a mustache, which was the best part of it. That was the best part of the joke.
Yeah, it's my first time here, so I don't know like how to like butt myself in.
Just go ahead and
I don't know.
speak
It's
up.
kind of like
Go ahead and interject.
I've been here I haven't been here for a while, but I've been listening for a while, and I respect a lot of almost everybody's opinion in here. To be honest, I take everyone's opinion. pretty seriously.
Charles doesn't like that opinion, though.
No, I like Charles. Charles cool. I like you too. I like Kaiser.
This is kind of boring. Got to get to the point.
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yep.
whatever. Yeah, but like it's just like it's my first time here, so
Kick him.
like the thing is with
Out with it, EU. Out with it.
my bad. Okay, the with the Nick thing, you said he's like a dictator, which like I can agree with, because he kind of has like really extremist views, which
All right,
I think like
you've had your chance.
I wouldn't.
Can you get rid of him now? Make me a co-host.
like
Then make me a co-host. If you're not willing to take out the trash, I'll take out the
Oh
trash.
well, listen.
You can't bring down the level of the conversation, man.
Yes.
Like we went somewhere and then you like dragged us back.
These
It's
are
just like,
conversation
Mea
murderers.
culpa, mea maxima culpa. He's
Yeah,
the
make
real
me a
Nietzschean
co-host.
tragedy
You're
having
not.
you up
You make me a co-host. Just do it. Give me the power.
I have an idea. This is really going to maybe break the mold, but let's just run with this and see what happens. Okay? How about that?
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Oh, boom! Look at that. Oh man, I'm going to get a lot of shit for this. but
Oh
let's-
boy, you're done. Massive block on.
Wow.
All right, have at it, fellas.
All-star panel we have
Yeah,
here.
have at it, fellas. Yeah.
We need to restart the because I don't even remember where we are before it ensues. Nick Fuentes and dictator.
Well, okay, I was just wondering because you guys, like Richard, you're kind of pre Nick Fuentes, and obviously Charles, you guys are like on this, similar pages, like kind of alternative, and I just wanted to see what you guys thought as he's like the new guy essentially.
Well, I mean, look, it is what it is. I mean, I think Nick is definitely smarter than his fans. I would say that, and yeah, there's obviously a lot of things
Thank God for that, though, right? I mean,
right. There's a lot of things that would disappoint me about him or whatever, and I think I did sense a kind of desperation in that speech where he gave about we're fighting the enemies of God, but we're willing to die, which means that we'll win. I mean, that's some martyrdom type thought, and I don't even know what to say to that. It's dangerous. It's sad. Maybe it's concerning. But I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, I think the movement probably wants, like the broader movement or the movement that is totally integrated with the GOP, wants something like that because he's a blend between a reflector and a clown. And I'm not even saying clown is like an insult, just this kind of hilarious personality. But then he's also a blend between a far right conservative and then a mainstream conservative. And I think that's underestimated because a lot of his opinions and tendencies are very similar to the tendencies of like people attending, Amfest or whatever the hell. And all of them, I bet with conservatives, you start to scratch them. Like I joked about this, like when you go and have conversations with an intelligent, highly educated liberal, you after one drink, you find that you're talking to like a eugenicist, like Madison Grant avatar. Like I've noticed this so many times. With a lot of mainstream conservatives, they can be like, well, we got to get Trump in there, and like, is our party? Have they gone astray? That Elon. What do you think? They'll have all these just totally normie opinions, but then like after maybe 2 beers, you find that you're sitting next to like a violent like revolutionary or something. Like that whole that whole like tendency to be totally outlandish and like they want to take they're going to force the vax upon us and because they want to kill us all and one day we'll all martyr ourselves for Christ against the liberals. That's like a mainstream opinion effect.
Yeah. It's all super LARPy. Like people want to feel like they would actually do something.
Yeah, the problem with conservative and just conservatism in general is that it's literally a defensive philosophy, which means you have to really be on the defense. And these people, they desperately want to be on the offense. They desperately want to, go take the fight to them. And unfortunately, in mainstream normie conservatism, that's just not allowed. So it's repressed unless, again, you get them drunk or you get them in just kind of a room where they're all kind of feeding off each other. Nick Fuentes, I mean, say whatever you want about it, but that America, his style of America First is very crusaderish. It kind of appeals to that disaffected core of people where they feel like they want to go out and be the Tradcath crusaders and take back the country and all that good stuff.
And he's willing to speak honestly about the Israeli shit.
I think that's the biggest thing. Like everybody, that's how people know him. Like that's how people get to know Fuentes for sure.
I mean,
that became when in 2016, 2017, that was like the sleeper issue, was how many of the young right wingers were deeply skeptical of all these, Israeli, and kind of like basically everyone was a Zionist at all times or else.
Good times,
and I think Fuentes just understood that that is just not a tenable position now. And he understood it before all the Gaza shit, but it's really true now.
It's just, again, nobody wants to. You got a group that's kind of like a sacred calf, and it's like people feel like they've had their boot on their necks for a minute, and you can't criticize them. Then you get this guy that actually does criticize them. It's like, holy shit! It's like Trump walking across the DMZ or some shit. Like he's
the baking the cookies joke is like objectively funny.
Yeah,
like when you heard it,
funny.
like
it is funny. Yeah.
The first time I heard it, I was like, oh shit! Like I didn't think you could do that and exist. And he's proving the limits of how much.
Well, I just thought it was about baking cookies. Like, what's the joke?
Yeah, right.
I mean, but
here's the thing.
I'm at a loss.
The difference between someone like him and I think, because I'm in my early 30s, in my generation, is that when we were listening and influenced by people, and maybe it's just a product of the time, I wasn't getting thought from people that were 4 years older than me. These were much older people that, so there's a big difference of there. The people that I looked up to were my father and people around me. And so I think that's a product of the time that these kids are connecting to somebody so close in age.
Well, they're deeply ironic, right? They don't communicate directly, and they don't communicate really intergenerationally. They communicate to each other, and that's it.
And also, obviously Charles, Spencer, you guys are saying a lot of the same things, but there's nobody that's 40 years old that's mainstream that says the same things at the same level that Nick Fuentes does. So It kind of requires someone that's not been in the system a little bit.
Absolutely true. There's a huge disconnect between Zoomers and other generations, probably even including millennials, actually, to a large degree. So that's interesting. The other thing I would say is that, and I said this to Nick when I was talking to him last week, it's you don't know what it's like. When I would go to CPAC in the 2000s, and I never went as a college student or anything like that. I started to go in 2007 when I was working at a AmCon and all that kind of stuff. On the Israel question, it was frozen in an ice age state. There was no dissent. You could be more likely to get away with dissenting on abortion, actually, even though that was also a very key issue. And you could have a conversation about immigration. You could have a conversation about tax cuts, offshoring. You could have conversations about those things, but the Israel question, there was no conversation. And I think Nick is a symptom of this, but I also think he's probably a cause of it to a large degree. But at this point, Charlie Kirk is almost reacting to the Groypers, and he's not going out too far on the, Israel is the Holy Land and everything they do is correct and blah, blah, blah. He's kind of playing to Nick's audience.
Yeah, he's taking
that
notes.
is new.
You remember the whole paper clip the green card to the thing that he said? Now, if you saw recently, he had that video where he's like, we don't even need any more legal immigration. It's that's directly ripped from the Groypers.
No question.
But Richard,
Yeah.
the descent of Israel, right? Because I was in when in the undergrad, part of what I did was the academia and political science, and then I switched to biology or whatever. But there was always a descent there, right? In academia, there was very high levels of criticism of Israel. I've been in classes where professors were quite they had a very negative view of Israel. So I think in that setting, it was always relevant to me and but I guess the average person, you're right, if they're consuming Fox News and just cookie cutter politics, I understand that, right?
Oh
The
yeah,
concept
I'm
of
not talking about academia, and I'm not even talking about the average person. I'm talking about conservatives,
yeah,
self-described conservatives.
yeah.
And I think Nick has genuinely had influence on conservatives, whereas I have had very little. Like, I think maybe there's a little bit going on there. Like, they picked up on some things, or I mean, I didn't originate the great replacement theory or anything, but they will pick up on some things here and there. But I would say that my influence has been like negative or something. Like, they're not, I don't influence them, but someone like Nick who thinks like them, talks like them, looks like them, etc. I think he's had a lot of influence on conservatives.
Yeah, I think him and John Doyle back when he did more stuff, like there was a market shift. You could see like John would say something 3 years before, and then mainstream conservatives would say it. I think he actually had more of an outsized effect than people realize.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just
But John Doyle is just like Nick Fuentes created in a lab.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
like the resemblance it's actually weird.
I mean,
say.
they have the same exact beliefs. Like John just doesn't say it, but
Yeah, and just like mannerisms, and it's odd.
yeah, it's the whole Zoomer thing. Yeah,
That's just Zoomers. You all look alike.
the right wing Zoomers. Yeah, that the online right wing Zoomers.
Yeah.
Is it like a race? We could maybe like categorize them.
the Z race.
I mean, we have like some
Concentrate them.
Greeks and stuff that look different.
If you
The
will.
Z-tards. Like,
Yeah, it's the Ziontologists versus the Zetards. The future of the modern right.
Is really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
it might be like literally a kind of race. Like, it's an ethnic group from like some part of Germany or like England. Like, you could actually like trace them back, and they're all like related. I'm not joking, actually.
It is weird how like walking through a crowd of like young Republicans or whatever, young conservatives, I can pick out the Nick Fuentes fan. Like before,
yeah.
like I can
Easily.
see them at distance. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting.
Is there a certain dress code? Is there a certain dress code?
It's like a cut of suit. It's a haircut. It's a style. It's a manner of talking.
Charles, I sort of get the like. Have you seen Peaky Blinders? You know the main protagonist of that film.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
Yeah, that's the impression I get. That's sort of that look.
I will tell you, when Nick links to something that I've written or talks about, like the number of people that just kind of show up out of nowhere in my inbox, or like he has like real rabid fans. And it's pretty interesting to watch, like that level of power and that level of influence.
Yeah, I mean that's what people when people say, I hear them, they go, "Oh, he's nothing." They don't pay attention to the effect that he has on. And I don't know how many people it is, but they are very active online and they're very involved in it, and they like consume a lot of his specific contents. Like I remember, like Richard, when you were, kind of in the more mainstream of the alt right, like people, there was there wasn't like a thing. It was like if somebody insulted you, for example, right? It would just be like, well, whatever. You were again, you weren't attached to it by name. You were involved in it, and he is the movement. Like he literally is the movement, right?
Yes. All movements have to be incarnated in a single person. This is what none of them understood, because there's a lot of intramural drama that went on, like the Patrick Casey, those types of people. They think that it's an actual movement, and they're like, oh, so I'm part of this movement, and like I have influence, and I can disagree with you, and I can do, and it's like it doesn't work that way. I mean, just the Trump movement, the Fuentes movement, other social movements throughout the 20th century that I don't even need to name, it has to be incarnated in a single person. And I'm not referring to Voldemort or something. The left-wing movements have the same dynamic.
Che, man.
Marx, Che, yeah,
Stalin was
exactly.
worse.
Do you think there's a way of like making a movement without it being incarnated in one person? Because I think that's
No.
No.
Okay.
And why would you even ask that question? Like like Jesus Christ, Napoleon, Martin Luther, like it. I mean, and I'm not comparing myself or Nick Fuentes or even you understand, but like it has to be incarnated in a person. That was the brilliance of Christianity. He incarnated Judaism, if you want to say that, into a person and moved it forward. I mean, as Nietzsche said, he fulfilled Judaism while also canceling Judaism. I mean, and I think that could only be done through a single individual.
Okay, but then as the forefathers of like Nick Fuentes, like you guys are both it's kind of interesting. Do you think there's like, because it's baked in so much irony, like he'll say, I love Hitler, like almost unironically, but also ironically. Do you think that's like a problem, that it's like kind of this not serious person on the outside is leading it? Or
Well, Jesus was also an ironist. Go read the dialogue he has with the Samaritan woman at the well. There's a lot of irony there. I mean, you have to learn the art of esoteric communication.
yeah,
Do people
I
are
think there's
always
nothing
talking about
wrong.
me. They're like, "Oh, are you a liberal?" Or like, "What do you mean by this? Did you say that?" Like, you have to be a little slippery. You also have to like kind of plant things in people's minds without saying them directly.
So maybe this is a stupid question, but as someone in their late 30s, I don't really know too much about Nick Fuentes or Milo. I did know about Richard because of Charlottesville. But how does someone like Fuentes stack up to like someone who used to claim to have sort of this big conservative movement like a Rush Limbaugh, who is considered very controversial and politically incorrect to a point where people were trying to cancel him before that was sort of like a thing in our recent discourse. How do they compare? Will Fuentes ever reach the heights of like a Rush Limbaugh, do you think?
Well, I mean,
It's the
the
wrong
world's
frame.
changed.
It's the wrong
Yeah,
frame.
yeah. I mean, the world's changed, and Rush Limbaugh did have mainstream. I mean, if you want to call these radio networks that were pumping his stuff all over the country, I mean, he had mainstream old media backing. He wasn't just with a ham radio in his basement or something. Now, Nick Fuentes kind of is like that, but we're just in a different age. I remember I don't even listen to the radio, but I mean, I remember one time turning it on and it was like the Travis guy, like the sportscaster, and then some other guy named Buck that took over Rush Limbaugh's spot. It was like the guy from he does like sports.
Buck Sexton and Travis something. Yeah, that's terrible.
And there
Yeah,
was
but
what's his name?
it's
Dan
irrelevant.
Bongino was the other guy.
Irrelevant, I would say. They're not even that bad. They're just irrelevant, because no young person is listening to terrestrial radio.
Yeah, I always thought that what's his name,
No,
Michael Savage was slightly more interesting than those type of people, just because of his style.
Yeah, Savage was good. I think he was from Baltimore, Maryland. But like I
was a
remember,
kid.
I listened to Rush Limbaugh up until he died. I was quite upset when he died. I was like, "Fuck, who am I going to listen to now?" And that's part of the reason I sort of.
I was because I graduated from college in 2001, so I was totally anti George W. Bush, and anti Iraq War and things like that. So I remember I would listen to Michael Savage when he would just like go off on these pro terror war tirades, and there were genuinely racist. I would say.
Was he not entertaining though, Richard? Let's be honest.
Of course, he's entertaining. I mean, he's quite a character. He has that East Coast vibe, and then he was broadcasting from San Fran.
It was interesting how much these guys hated Muslims, and I just remember it was such a weird thing because like growing up in the Boston area, like I knew a few Muslims, like they were like my classmates or whatever. So like in the evenings, I would listen to this like crazy hateful stuff from Savage or Levin or whatever. And then I'd go and like, have tea over at my friend Sabnum's house or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's just very strange, the disconnect. I was like, this isn't
But
going to.
I was, people think the Richard Spencer as liberal thing was new. It wasn't new at all. I mean, I voted for John Kerry. I was totally opposed to the terror war. I mean, I don't think I've ever been philosophically a liberal. I mean, I think everyone can tell that. And I have a lot of just kind of right wing instincts as well. But in terms of policy, I'm totally comfortable like being on the left. And I hated all that stuff. I
My theory,
hated that
my
stuff.
theory is always that the Democrats have a problem with white men, and the Republicans have a problem with everyone else. So if you're a white man, the smartest thing to be is a Democrat because you have like a lot more leverage over social phenomenon.
Yeah, but doesn't it make you harder to then be allowed in the party, right? The barrier of entry
Oh, I
is,
don't really
is
believe that parties work that way. I think that joining a party is a sucker's game. I think that if you have real power, you shape the party around you rather than like work your way up through the machine
I mean,
politics.
it's not even like it's a visceral, like an actual problem with white men. It's more so just the fact that, again, like white men are, in opposition just due to where they typically fall on the hierarchy when it comes to earnings and everything. And so, I mean, they're just sort of in opposition of the
No.
agenda.
That's the wrong take. That's the wrong take. The problem of the Democratic Party in general is that it has a problem with basically running itself. Like it has problems administering the actual political party. So like the Republicans have three groups that run the Republican Party. It's the Jews, the gays, and the Mormons. Okay, those are the brains of the Republican Party. And if you decapitate one or you reduce the power of one of those, then the whole system kind of collapses in on itself. The Democrats have this problem where they've got everyone talking all this intersectional bullshit, but like the homework still has to get done. People still have to like write policy papers. They still have to like do shit. And the reality is that it's a bunch of white men that do all that work, and some white women, but largely that's like how it has been. And so if you're a white man, like it's better to just work for the Democrats and have you can have your AOCs or others as your face, but it's just a much easier time because you're not competing or fighting in a knife fight with like the Jews, the gays, or the Mormons in the Republican Party.
Yeah, I see your point.
Interest
It's a
also
sociological
divergence.
observation rather than a political argument. People get lodged in these like argument things, and it's like no. Like if you help the Democrats are a technocratic party, and so they require like white nerds to serve them. And if you think about the Republican Party, it's a crime syndicate basically, where they're interested in just consuming and resources. It's a crime syndicate plus a cult because it has all these like deeply religious crazy people in it. Now, if you want to get laid, you should join the Republican Party because if you're a heterosexual man, there's like there's
Few Republican.
there's like no competition.
Ironically, you're in a distinct minority. Yeah.
Yes. I
Wait,
remember
okay.
going to a
Finally.
Republican Party event, and they literally, all of the guys that I was talking to all went to a gay bar afterwards. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, it was like a friend of mine realized after he joined the priesthood that he was the only heterosexual priest in his whole parish because he realized that they were all homosexuals all around him. And he quickly left the priesthood and got married. And I was like, yeah, well, that's kind of obvious. That's sort of like the whole thing. But he didn't understand that. He didn't like fully commit to that. And so there's like a lot of these people who are true believers within the Republican Party, and they're basically the cows that vote for McDonald's. Like they
Yeah,
don't.
I remember this. I was dating this girl who was working in the 2008 Ron Paul campaign, and we were driving by like a libertarian party like after CPAC, and she was just rolling her eyes. She was like, "Look at them all! Like they're all under 5'9". Like most are gay. The ones that are heterosexual are figuratively gay." And she was just like, It was basically like you know,
It's so
you
true.
didn't have any competition. Like you're sick.
I mean, if you want to get laid, you shouldn't go into the political route, right? That's kind of like going to the medical field, go somewhere else. Like it's.
Oh no. The easiest women to pick up in the world are Republican women.
Yeah.
Very true.
I'd say nurses.
I've heard they get down at
Oh
these
well,
conferences.
nurses
and
are on
stuff.
a different. Hey, boxing, seriously, you might get canceled with this kind of talk. I mean,
I know.
you're an active doctor. I mean, you should say theoretically speaking.
No, I mean it's
Nurses.
I've dated nurses, but it's by proxy.
Dude, I'm trying to help you. You're digging yourself.
But they also
You're gonna be
Patients are actually
fired,
the
and then you're gonna like
easiest.
blame me or something because everyone blames me for everything.
That's because you're an anti-Semite. That's why you got rid of him, Richard. That's why you did it.
No.
That's how it happened. I'm the witness.
Wait, okay. What do you guys think of Thomas Massey? Because he seems to have some dissent from everybody else recently.
Good engineer, from what I've read.
I know him. very. I'm a donor to him, and he's a friend. And he is a nerd's nerd, and he hates the Israelis. Like, just straight up. Like, privately, he will tell you how much he hates them.
He's kind of Ron Paul 2.0, like maybe even more than
He's
Rand
the
Paul.
deep state Rand Paul because his family has all these connections with like, the military and all this other stuff. So his son is like a helicopter gunner or whatever, and he's just like disgusted at all these wars for Zog, basically. And then what happened was in 2018, 2019, whenever Trump had that thing where he wanted the authorization to go to war in Iran, and there was like Francis Rooney, Matt Gaetz, and Thomas Massey are the three that voted against it. That was like that's that history there, which is I think an important history. And Massey got targeted by Lynn Wood, that nut job down in Georgia, who worked for Steve Wynn, the casino magnate. That's kind of the history. And then they came after him and like they attacked him and all this shit. And he won like 88 points to 12 points or something like that with the other guy, McMurtry, who he's up against.
Do you think he won't get like the political power long term because he is kind of the nerd, not the actual like politician?
I don't think he really wants to be anything other than a member of Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, the Republican Party lacks talent. I mean, I think it's obvious they lack talent for anybody with any movement. Like, like you look at the prospects of like a younger, more charismatic one to push any, like, I guess disregard the deep state, the connections that, that Charles would say, but like, who would you consider like even a talent, Charles, that's on the Republican side?
I mean, it depends on the issues,
I mean, necessarily though, who has any appeal or who can actually even?
They've got nothing. They have Trump. I mean, it's pretty obvious.
Like literally
boxing. Yeah, I'm with you.
Which
for a national figure, it's difficult.
It's like only Matt Gaetz and Trump.
Yeah, and I mean, Matt Gaetz might not even be in. He might not even be in there.
Matt, people don't like this, but Matt is the heir to Trump, and it just is what it is.
Hopefully.
Well,
I don't like that because it's just obvious. I mean, what is the heir to Trump is a Zionist who wants to take away your Social Security.
He's not a Zionist.
No thanks.
Not a Zionist.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like Matt Gaetz is.
He has a different secret opinion than everything he expresses publicly.
If you're in the Republican Party, so first of all, he's publicly criticized the Israelis, so you can look that up. It's like not secret. NSO group commentary in committee. I mean, they hate him and they try to target him with primary challenges at every cycle, and he beats them every time. But if you want to be governor of Florida, you have to like the Jews, and you have to make the Jews comfortable.
Yeah, we saw that with DeSantis, but it's got.
By the way, there's this idea that like you should be public on your views in politics is like stupid. Like this is not how it's done. You hide your views until you're in a position of power where you can actually effectuate.
Yeah, but that's also a cope. I mean, you can say they're hiding their views and they're
not
these
at all.
Really deep and serious people and whatever.
It's not a cope at all. You judge people by their enemies, and like if the Israelis are funding primary challenges against you, that's usually a tell that they suss something out.
Although,
and
to that point,
it is what it is.
Yeah, although to that point, I've actually learned people aren't as smart as we kind of think they are, and I've actually realized.
It depends. It depends on the
Yeah, they're
person.
not as Machiavellian though, to the point where they can
I
literally
mean,
go out
I
and
have
give a speech.
I've met Nikki Haley. She's objectively stupid and observably stupid. Like I could just tell you, like
I don't think you need to meet her.
I've
No.
had like 4 or 5 conversations with her, and I genuinely think she's
And that's
stupid.
crazy,
And I
being a
understand
high
why
earning
she's even still
Indian.
talking.
Like that really skews that shit, because normally those people are.
No, she's not a high earning Indian. She was an accountant for her parents' lingerie business. That's like her whole, that's the grand sum total of her executive experience. And then what she cut a deal with the weird people who wanted to move Boeing to South Carolina to like, basically save all this money. And she's objectively stupid, but her stupidity has been an asset because she doesn't ask questions, right? That's sort of like how it works with her. And so people are like, okay, we'll just let the stupid brown woman think she runs the state of South Carolina, and it's really the lieutenant governor that like was calling all the shots, and he's now governor, and he's now in charge. So you have to like meet these people. Like many of them have a kind of public stupid face that you encounter and you consume and you deal with, and then many of them privately, there's like shit that they want. They like want to make money with their wife, or they want to like, I mean, so there's like a whole secret world that many of these people inhabit. And it's very obvious when you sit down and like talk to them, because many of them, after like 2 or 3 or 4 drinks, so they know if you're not recording them or you're not, like, they will actually talk to you openly, especially if they think you can help them achieve whatever their secret objective is.
But like, if you look at like just like how the mannerisms of like Nikki Haley versus like Hillary Clinton, like I personally think that Hillary Clinton isn't like, she's an intelligent person, but she comes off as like,
Not really, not really.
Yeah, no,
compared.
I disagree, boxing.
No, not really, man. I mean, there's like a handful of them. I probably met like 300, 400 politicians, and I could name like 10 to 15 of them that I would actually hire for a job.
The smart ones
right?
tend to be well, maybe I think
The
the
staff.
staffers. I would say maybe the staffers though, but I mean,
or the
depends.
wives, or the mistresses, or the
Well,
siblings.
well, but hold on, Charles. There was a short while where there was a shift in this, like with Bill Frist, like an MD, very successful
No, he
insurance
wasn't in
company.
charge. His wife was in charge.
Oh,
Like,
you
this is
think
what I'm
so?
trying to say, is that there are these families that really run. They don't run like by themselves, right? Like, there's like a handful of them that are like smart or whatever, but there are these networks of, so like there are these families that you'll run into where there'll be like 5 members, and like the dumb one they'll send into the political arena. The rest of them, they'll like run the business affairs, or they'll like, like that's how it kind of works. And so when you understand that like there's a number of these networks around the country, and like they're not in charge, the people who appear to be in charge, who appear to be the politician, like Josh Hawley is not like a live player in the game. Like, you'll talk to him and you will have a conversation with him, but he doesn't make decisions in any meaningful way like a human being would. He is just a pet of Leonard Leo, you know? And for a number of these guys, like Eric Schmidt, the senator from Missouri, like he's got this mistress who's on his payroll, who's like works for him as as in his congressional staff, and like that's what's going on there. He's a reliable vote who will basically vote for whatever the mob Republican interests are. And so you have to kind of like go through all these people and see like what do they actually want? What is their actual objective? And like
typically that's handed to them along with their committee assignments after they go meet with the big money staff, a lot of the big money lobbyists and stuff, and they just sort of tell them what they want them to do. That's usually when their goals are set.
Yeah, I mean, look, like the question is like, who was the biggest Zionist in Congress? And the answer is Kevin McCarthy. He was their pet, And if you take out Kevin McCarthy, the whole
In the
system,
GOP or all of Congress?
I would say in the House of Representatives for sure. And what's going to happen now is the Israelis are going to dispose of Kevin McCarthy.
Well, yeah.
They're going to help get rid of him because they want to show their power. And that's what the LA Times story today was about, with respect to like all that stuff that just came out about Kevin and all the freewheeling spending. Because what happened was Kevin took all this money from all these criminals, and then he like wasn't effective. So now they have to punish him.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason he
Yeah.
was number one fundraiser. Like literally was able to raise billions. Like you don't do that without shaking some hands with some unsavory individuals. But that kind of it brings to my next question, which is, I mean, the Democrats seem like they're almost like it's kind of harder to read them, really. Like, you got APAC literally trying to fund challenges against the squad. You got a lot of just sort of nameless and wild cards over that way, and you really just don't know what they want. I guess that's kind of my question, because like the Republicans are pretty simplistic, but the Democrats just seem very multifaceted and duplicitous and just kind of hard to understand like what the overall goal is other than just power.
Things are just way more subtle with the Democrats than they are with the Republicans.
Well, yeah, but I tend to agree with Malcolm on this a little bit, that they're, the Republican infighting, that like the three major groups you referenced are all moving in different directions. But the Democrats' main focus seems to be just like maintaining power at various levels in the government to ensure that their agenda gets passed, like green initiatives,
Yeah,
progressive
they're much more
social
disciplined.
agendas, things like
They're
that.
much more disciplined than the Republicans, just generally, because
Yes, they pursue their ideologies way more
it's not even
coherently.
ideology. They're much more like rule followers. They're much less like herding cats. If you run into Democratic politicians versus Republican ones, the Democrat ones tend to be much more team players, much less like about themselves or their own. Like they're also, their leadership is also willing to march people off a cliff, and to lose seats in order to achieve political objectives. They're just disciplined. They're better at running things. They're better at counting votes. They're better at raising money. They're better across the board. They're just like a level of competence that the Republicans just don't have anymore.
Yeah,
Sure.
I
I mean,
mean, there's literally like AOC and stuff that would probably be communist if they actually said their beliefs. And then there's Joe Biden, who's like essentially just your average
Well, no,
grandfather.
AOC's
Um,
AOC's a grifter. I don't believe it for a second
No,
she
no, no.
could be a
AOC is
communist.
AOC CIA. That's why APAC is targeting her, because
yeah,
yeah. No. I mean, like the squad, if you look into all the squad members and their relationships with the U.S. intelligence community, it's very obvious what they all are. I mean, Ilhan Omar's father was a CIA informant for years. Corey Bush is there to take out Lacey Clay, right where the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency is. Maybe you just look at their donors, you look at who they hire as their staffers. It's all very obvious. And the APAC people are freaked the fuck out about all of this, so they're trying to take them out one by one.
wait, so who's like what's the objective of the people kind of hiring and helping AOC and stuff in the squad?
Well, I mean, you just look at AOC's like who her family is, right? And you look at like where she went to BU, studied international relations, lived in Niger. Like you never hear about any of that shit. And if you look at like where did she do? She showed up as the kind of hot Latina that was like super far lefty, right? And she showed up right at the same time that Bernie Sanders did, right? Like what was that all about? And she sort of stole the energy of Bernie, and she like was the squad or whatever, and they had a narrow majority, a 5-seat majority or something like that in the House of Representatives, and so she could call a lot of her shots by having this squad of people who would vote with her. But like the way you need to understand these people is you need to understand like the story that they're selling you is very different than the networks and relationships that they're a part of. So look at the pedigree of the staffers who work for them. What colleges did they go to? What assignments did they have beforehand? What jobs did they have beforehand? And then when you start to do that, you start like a picture starts to emerge that like there are these deep state Democrats, and many of them kind of look lefty or progressive or whatever. But then you look at their pedigree and you're like, hey, wait a second, this person got like School of Foreign Service award, or hey, they like lived for a stint in London. What's that about, right? And that's when it really becomes obvious over time.
And are they getting paid by like Muslim countries, or what do you mean? Like
Sometimes it's
just before
Muslim
we go down
countries,
that road,
sometimes it's
I
Qatar.
want to let Richard follow up on this.
I
Richard,
just have it's this Gnosticism is just. I mean,
Yeah,
what is the
Rich has an
agenda?
ideological frame on the world, which is how he consumes it. And it's a frame. It just doesn't happen to be correct when it comes to a lot of the political powers.
What is the agenda of all these secret CIA agents who are like
I didn't say they were
Larka's
secret CIA
Latina
agents. I said they
green
were
policy
they're
people?
part of a network. And the way
What
the
is the
network
agenda?
works.
What are they with the
Oh, I mean, the
network?
Inflation Reduction Act, I mean, that is a very important piece of legislation. What does it do is it drives down prescription drug prices, which reduces the incentives for money laundering through our pharmaceutical industry, which is critically important to get real drugs out there. It also does things like move us away from the fossil fuel lobby and moves us towards clean energy, which makes us less dependent on shitty countries like Russia and the UAE and Saudi.
Yeah, but like, so hold on a second. With that, we just opened the largest cobalt mine in America in Salmon,
Mhm.
Idaho.
Yeah.
Within a month after opening that mine, China dumped all of their cobalt reserves on the market, tanking the price, forcing
Yeah.
our mine here in America to close and perpetuating dependence on China.
Well,
Just
so
saying.
one, I don't believe so first of all, the United States doesn't allow a lot of mining quite deliberately. And that's because we would rather drink other people's milkshakes.
Bro,
Because
I
we
just found out. So on Wednesday, I interviewed the son of the former director of Sunshine Mine up in Wallace, Idaho. So he was the director of the whole fucking operation.
Yeah, but none of
And
that shit matters. Like, let me explain
hold on
what
a
this
second.
is.
I was
Yeah.
asking him about, so who was on the board? And he said, oh, we used to call the board the Kosher Nostra. I was like, what the fuck? And it's legit. And they controlled the largest silver mine in the world. Interesting.
Yeah, but we have to understand is that like the US, by being the world superpower, doesn't drink its own milkshake unless it has to when it comes to natural resources. We would rather give other countries these like worthless pieces of pieces of paper known as US dollars to buy their resources. And this is how environmentalism and the intelligence community are linked, right?
Why don't they just say that though? Because that makes more fucking sense.
I don't understand why there's a lot of like. I don't understand why the conversations that I have like. Well, for one, I think it's many of the people who run the intelligence community. They're older generations, and they were raised to be a lot more subtle. They didn't grow up in the social media environment. They don't know how to speak. They lived in a subtle age because when you were a young person, when you were like growing up, when you grew up in that world, you you were just kind of
Yeah, they
trained
understand
to
social
shut
cues.
up.
Yeah.
Yes, and our generations, like basically any of us who came up post Facebook, we just say what we think on numerous topics, and there's a power around that. So we move much faster than they do, but they move much more deliberately. So they are trained as a young people to basically hide what their true intentions are, which is why they have a private conversation and a public conversation. And the disconnect between those two is something that I find fascinating. But they're politicians. They lie. They present an image of themselves that's different than what they actually genuinely believe. And you see this all the time. This is why Richard and I have all these arguments about this stuff, because he has this sort of view that like, oh, people should mean what they say and say what they mean. And it's like, when has that ever happened in like with powerful people? They oftentimes never, what they'll do is they'll create these fake reasons for doing various things because they always like to camouflage their moves. So you'll see this all the time where somebody will get fired for like wokeism or whatever. And the real reason they were fired was because like they sucked at their job or they grabbed somebody's tit. Right? Like there's like a lot of that goes on in the world.
Or say we need to go into Iraq because there's WMDs.
Yeah. I mean, people lie all the time. They distort things all the time. And if you want to like drive up the price of oil in the world because your coalition makes a bunch of money from oil, then what do? You create all this instability in the world that drives up the price of oil. All I do is I'm a basic bitch. I just look at the price of things. And the price of gasoline has been going down over the last whatever, in large measure because of the Biden policies. It is what it is. So I don't know. There's like a lot of this shit too where it's like, you don't think that like Ilhan Omar's father is a known CIA asset. It is public. Like, you can look it up. He like informed on all this shit going on in Somalia. So you don't think that the daughter of a CIA informant, like, you think she's some kind of like crazy lefty whatever. And she's like married to a white dude. Like, I mean, Samira like posts all these photos of all the squad members, and they're all like fucking white dudes. I mean, AOC's husband looks like me.
He is. I
Like,
thought he was you.
I'm disappointed that he's not. I would have been all over that. But unfortunately, I didn't meet her. I met her. I met her at BU back when she was Sandy Cortez, and I dismissed her as
Really?
kind of like one of these. Yeah, I was introduced to AOC by this CIA's recruiter at BU in like 2010, and I was super turned on by her, but I thought she was just a dumb Latina chick. But it turns out there was like a lot more going on there than I understood at the time, because I had this autistic view of the world that like people mean what they say, and like, oh, if they're a cop they have to tell you they're a cop, right? Like, I had all these like stupid views because I was like raised and trained to have an engineer's perspective on the world, and as I've gotten older I've realized just how fucking dumb that all is.
Yeah.
I mean, when a woman
Charles,
tells
do
you
you
she
think
loves
there's
you,
any?
when a woman tells you she loves you, does she actually love you? Right? No, it's conditional on all the things you've done for her.
It's her actions or yours.
Yeah, of course, right? It's of course. Oh, I really like this food you made me. Like, but I'm not eating any of it, right? It's like, come on, like, be real. Like, people watch what you
Yeah, she
do
says
rather
that
than
more
you
for
say.
you, not for her. Yeah.
100%. So there's a lot of this like subtlety of communication that I don't think like the Richards of the world understand all that well in politics.
Well, do you think
Charles,
it's
do you
not?
buy into the?
I think there's understanding, but maybe it's just sort of a different perception of how the political class operates. I don't know, because
I mean, you know what I'm talking about, Zonigo, because you've seen it, like living in Northern Virginia. You know what I'm talking about. Like, there's this like public-private, in the press conversation, on Twitter conversation, and then there are those of us who can like intermediate between like what the imperial city wants and what the rest of the country want, and that's kind of like what we do when we talk about these things in spaces, right? Like, the U.S. government will have certain objectives it wants, like as a deep state, it wants like certain things to happen in the world and in the United States and the nature of our economy. And like, you look at all these ex-CIA people who went to go work for Google, like, you don't think that has an effect on like what kind of company Google is? Of course it does, right? So the problem I have with a lot of these people is they live in this kind of fantasy land in which like none of these things are actually happening. And you're like, Google just hired 1,700 ex-CIA people. Like, what do you think they're doing? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think they're like? Do you think they just like wake up and they just like go to the office and they just have like a normal basic bitch job? Like, what do you think they do all day?
Thanks to Pim Eyes, I happened to find a random picture of all of them in the same room at a dinner in D.C. with Robert Gates.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yeah. This is what I'm saying, right? Like, and if you're a thinking person, you start to like chin stroke on some of these things, and you're like, oh, that's what's going on here. It's a deep state takeover. And you'll notice this with companies, right? People will get moved out. It's like Sheryl Sandberg is no longer at Facebook. Why is that? Why did Nick Clegg replace her? Who the fuck is he? He was the former like head of the Liberal Democrats in the UK. So like, at a certain point, you just reach this moment where you're like, yeah, whatever. They say they're like a big lefty, but like, oh, they always vote for the intelligence community packages. Oh, they always vote for whatever the DoD wants. Oh, it's like, come on, like, be serious here, people. You know what I mean? Or they say they're super pro-Israel, but they don't do anything Israel wants, and Israel is like pissed at them for being insufficiently pro-Israel, right? Like, we all know politicians pay lip service to things they don't want to deal with, right?
Yeah, I mean that's like what the entirety of congressional hearings are, right?
100%. Those,
like every time you see those, it's like all they do is go up there and talk about how, oh, well, they hold these people's feet to the fire, and then like nothing gets done.
Well, no, something gets done. They raise a bunch of money for themselves from whatever interest group they were making happy.
Right. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, yeah. How's it going, Samir? I saw you had an Urdu only space. How did that go?
Was actually an Israeli politics space that ended up turning into an Urdu only space, and the Israeli politics space was really good.
What was the conclusion that their politics is sort of effed, or this internal struggle?
There was an Iranian guy arguing with a PLO guy about Israeli politics, this two-state solution, one-state solution. It was really entertaining, and but I did fall asleep while hosting, and I have to download the archive and re-listen
We're
to it.
gonna make Israel legal. That's what we're gonna do in a second Biden term.
So here, I was actually thinking of you, Chuck, because I was gonna bring you in, um, but I had fallen asleep. They were talking about Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid, and both of the PLO guys. I think everybody was in agreement that it's gonna be Benny Gantz. So that would have been interesting
No,
to get your
they're just
perspective.
wrong about that. They do, the PLO people just like don't understand Israeli politics a lot. It's like very frustrating. They want it to be Benny Gantz because they want to believe that there's like this giant military whatever, and it's like no, that's like not going to be permitted. Benny Gantz will not be permitted to be PM.
I mean, just from an outside view, Lapid seems to have way more juice at the moment.
Yeah, and he's like sexier and interesting, and people like him, and they think Benny Gantz is like a weird general dude. But the Palestinians want it to be Benny Gantz because they can be like, oh, he's a war criminal, and he's now the PM. And it's much harder for them to misbehave in all these ways if it's Yair Lapid because he's a talk show host.
And American Jews, liberal Jews, love Yair Lapid.
Yeah, because he's what they wish they were, which is cool. You know, he's a celebrity basically. He's like, it would be like if Stephen Colbert became president or something, right? Like everybody would swoon over that shit, and all these like liberals would be like, oh, he's so cool. He wears like black turtlenecks.
Like Zelensky.
Yeah, well, Zelensky. I mean, Zelensky is being replaced by Umerov, very obviously. You know, I don't think people really understand what Zelensky.
You really think Ukraine's just going to go from a Jew to a Muslim, and the Orthodox or the Catholics aren't going to have their say?
Yeah, I do. I do, because
I don't know.
it comes down to which criminal network gives you the money. So the Jew criminal network was all behind Zelensky, and that was what Kolomoisky was all about. And Kolomoisky was the go-between. Like the whole Steele dossier, the whole point of it was to protect the Israeli assets in Ukraine and Russia. That was like that was.
Charles, if they go to a Muslim from a Jewish guy,
dude, he's not even a Muslim. He's a CIA asset.
Hear me, correct. They're going to go after Chechnya and Dagestan. That's going to be the move there, because
no,
the
what they're
Chechens
going to do.
Laugh at it, Zag. That
no, I'm
going to
tell you what. Here's what they're going to do. Okay, Zelensky is not doing enough to make America happy because he wants a bunch of money that he can launder. That's like what it's about. Because he's a criminal, and criminals like to steal money. And Umerov like basically spent 3 years in the United States, speaks fluent English. He's a Muslim who's 41 years old who drinks and parties. He's like a party Muslim, and he like likes the United States. But more importantly, his roommate is very close to the or his roommate from college is very tied in with the UAE, and the UAE is going to be the money, and Turkey is going to be the muscle that helps rebuild all of Ukraine. And what's more is he's a Crimean Tatar. And the theory of the case is that the Muslims who are fighting, alongside Putin, they're not going to want to fight a Muslim.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's basically
that's ridiculous, though. And if why would the Azov guys not just pick up their ball and go home at this point? If Umarov actually becomes the leader of the country,
because
why does Right Sector even exist?
Because they like him a lot more than they like the criminal Jew running the place.
I'd imagine they'd like to run their own country themselves than see it passed from
they like to fight, and they like money, and Zelensky basically steals. I mean, it all comes down to who will pay you more money. That is the history of Ukraine in a nutshell.
Charles, what government officials don't like money and aren't corrupt?
I mean, there's a lot of people that are ideological, but like, look, if you go to Ukraine, it's the whole place is a giant protection racket. So the question is, which protection racket do you serve? And right now, Zelensky is not helpful enough to Uncle Sam. And Umerov is like, what do you need? I'm happy to help. What do you guys need? How can I help you? So, like, who do you think the U.S. is going to back? The guy who was a CIA asset, or the guy who was backed by the criminal Jew? Like, which person do you think the U.S. is going to support long run?
The criminal Jew.
You know who hated Money Delta? The old president of Uruguay. He lived in like a little ramshackle hut and drove a 35-year-old car.
Of
I'm
where?
just telling. By the way, he was
Uruguay.
The Uruguay guy was a huge front for the criminal syndicates down there. I remember this dude now, like thinking back to it.
Go on.
I think they eventually got him on all the offshore money that he had, because he was like, "Oh, I have no money. I'm whatever," just because he took all of his money and brought it abroad. No, the point I'm making is,
I don't know. He looks like he has no money, but maybe he was hiding it well.
Kolomoisky. Well, it's the same thing they tried with Pinochet. They were like, "Oh, Pinochet has no money. He's for the people," and then they found all the bank accounts in Switzerland. But Kolomoisky is very simple, right? Kolomoisky was busted in September, and because Zelensky wanted more money from the U.S., and the U.S. gave him a list of oligarchs to go after and crack down on. Now, Zelensky didn't want to do that because a lot of those oligarchs had dirt on Zelensky because they helped prop up Zelensky's criminal government. And so, like, that's the history there. So Zelensky is, like, dragging his feet on counter-oligarch shit in Ukraine. Whereas Umerov is like, oh, I'm a Muslim in a Ukrainian country. The best way to show that I'm for the Ukrainian people is to crack down on all these criminal Jew oligarchs. And so that's kind of the deal that's being cut, rather obviously.
I mean,
how do you think that Kolomoisky case up in Cleveland eventually plays out, Charles?
Oh, I mean, it's very obvious, isn't it? Like, basically Kolomoisky laundered billions of dollars through U.S. property markets through the Chabad network, much of which has through lines through Jared Kushner and all that stuff. I mean, that's why the convention was in Cleveland in 2016. Like, that's what all that was.
But do you think he can possibly draw on his Israeli citizenship, his Cypriot citizenship, to weasel his way out of this, or is the noose pretty tightly around his neck?
He lost his Ukrainian citizenship. I mean, he's in jail right now. You know, Kolomoisky is. So, can he escape from that? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess I've always just figured he'd weasel his way out of it and end up living a decent life in Israel. But I guess we'll see.
No, there's all these people in Ukraine that like Sugar Daddy Uncle Sam. And so because they like Sugar Daddy Uncle Sam, and Sugar Daddy Uncle Sam like makes money printer go brr, right? They want a taste of that money. So what they're going to do is they're going to be like, oh, you need me to like hand over this criminal that already paid me that has no money? Yeah, I'll hand him over. Yeah, you want this one too? Because they want to get rid of the people that they already control. You see what I mean? Like Kolomoisky can't pay them as much as Uncle Joe can pay them. So why would they have anything to do with him? Do you see what I'm saying? Like that's the psychology of it.
No,
there's
I hear
more
you.
to it than that. I mean, I always hate it when people equate everything to money, you know?
No, I'm just telling you, like, having dealt with the Ukrainians and having dealt with the Turks and having dealt with this part of the world, this is how these people operate. So Umerov sees an opportunity to ingratiate himself politically with, he sees an opportunity to ingratiate himself politically with the ethnic Ukrainians. And the best way to do that is to scapegoat all the criminal Jews that are there.
Zach, before I leave, I just want to ask a question. This is for everybody. Have you guys heard from Xerxes?
No. Has he not been on in a while? Has he tweeted?
I thought he disabled his account.
Yeah.
He put out a tweet. He put out a tweet that said, "I've said everything I need to," and now he's done.
Wow. You know who else left?
Maybe he's on like an Argo mission.
Samir, David Wiseman also left Twitter again. So
did something happen before Xerxes did that, or
I don't know. I mean, I put a tweet
probably.
I put a tweet out last night that said "mission accomplished," but that didn't mean I was leaving. Just meant I found a fucking gold mine. Thank you.
Yeah, it's sad. I miss him.
I don't. Sayonara.
What did you find? Name
Thank you. Next.
What did you find?
We're we're not going to talk about that. Maybe never.
Oh, okay.
I like it when all these people get like afraid or they like run away. I think it's good. Fuck them.
You know, now that you
Wait, did
mention
you
it,
have beef
Samira,
with
there
them,
seems to be a
Chuck?
lack of Iranians in spaces I've been in recently. I don't know where they've all gone. Not just Xerxes.
I've noticed that as well. They don't come into my spaces much, but I don't know. Maybe they're on a mission altogether. I don't know. Who knows?
Is it because they
Chuck,
don't like
you didn't
you?
have
They've
beef
given
with him,
up.
did
They've
you,
given
Chuck? I
up.
thought you were cool with Xerxes.
No, I find him annoying. I find him annoying. I mean, you asked. I'm just answering you. Like, he's annoying.
What's
He would
the
talk all this shit, and he like wouldn't know a lot of things that he was claimed to be an expert in. And I would ask him basic bitch questions, and he didn't know anything. I'm like, oh, okay, this is just like somebody running their mouth.
I heard something about dogs, and then it turned into something else. It's really funny.
That does not narrow it down.
There was a famous argument, like a lot of people
All you
talked
said
about it.
was dogs. I'm like,
It
what?
was about dogs in the Muslim world, and I think his argument was that Muslim countries like kill dogs or something. And then I think Chuck and Nuance were like, "What the fuck?"
Really? That's what did it?
He was trying to make the case that like if you're a proper Muslim country, you don't have dogs in your country. And I was like, I was just in Turkey and there are fucking dogs everywhere.
So
And I've
what? We
been
doxed this guy for this, and now he's
no,
gone.
Yeah,
we
like
didn't
the
we didn't
greatest
dox him.
livestock guardian dogs in the world come from
Well,
Turkey.
Samira's fantasy
The
is a country with
Akbash
no
and the
dogs.
Kangals.
I'm
She's
just like sick
she's
of
just
this
a
like anti-Muslim bullshit that this guy would say about the Middle East, and I'd be like, "What the fuck are you even talking about?" And he couldn't answer other questions about Iran, so he's like supposedly some big Iran expert, and he didn't know shit about any of this stuff, and it was just very annoying. And I was like, oh, "Okay, so you're just full of shit." And he got mad and he started stammering, and I was like, "Okay, whatever." And he left. He like rage quit the space, and I was like, "All right, well, he's just full of shit. Got it."
That's pretty weak.
Wow. What? Who are
Speaking
we
of
talking?
dogs and Muslims, can we acknowledge how badass that one Israeli teenager who managed to sneak her puppy all the way to the Hamas tunnel was? And then there was like, apparently, according to her, the Hamas guys started arguing about whether she could keep it or not. I've been chuckling in my head, imagining that scene for a
What?
few days. Them realizing she had this dog, one guy wanting to kill it, the other Hamas guy having a heart and being like, nah, fuck it, let her have it. And she kept it for like 40 plus days or whatever.
I don't understand why people don't understand that, like, the Middle East for decades, for like forever, like what they do is they take hostages for each other, and this is like how they keep their conflicts from not getting super violent,
Yeah.
because like this is like what they do. Like this has been going on for forever, and so like we should just let it play out and like have a ceasefire while it all plays out, because that way they're not killing each other.
Anyways, Samira, so your fantasy is no dogs, right? Zero dogs. I'm good with just no pit bulls, but you want to go all the way to no dogs.
Careful, it's
It's
boxing
about
No,
you're
I'm
talking
not
about.
gonna.
that's a
I'm
very
not gonna.
snowflake position.
I'm not
Careful,
gonna
boxing has
try
a
to push
vested
them here.
interest in this argument.
No. It's just not. This has nothing to do with a religion. It's just a joke.
I
No, no,
like
I mean
cats.
your
I
dog. You
really
love
love
your dog.
cats, though.
You know, you care
I
intimately
like
about
cats
this
too.
issue. So
The
I would
one
just
thing is,
ban. I
I've
would ban
avoided.
women of reproductive years from having dogs or cats. That's what I would personally do, because I think it has a huge problem in our society.
it really does.
That is
I would
fair.
also tax like the small dogs where women pretend that they're their baby. I would tax the shit out of that. You wouldn't.
Plants too. You got to do plants too.
I
They
don't
have
think
this.
so. Plants are okay. Plants are okay
I
because
don't know. They get this. It's like the you know how they say marijuana is like a gateway drug. It's like that's the plant, and then
I
they
am
go to
with you. Like when
dogs.
people talk about their fur babies, like when women talk
Oh
about
no,
their
Oh,
no,
fur
Charles.
babies,
I have a
it's
dog
like
for
no.
security. I have a dog for
Yeah, that's
security.
fine. That's whatever. But you're
that's
not a
what
Five
woman.
women say.
pound
You're not a
Oh,
woman.
dog
so
that
are
would
are
bite
any of you
somebody if
guys
they
going to
tried to enter my
Amfest, by the
fenced
way?
in
Get a
No,
gun,
yard.
Greg.
when you run into
Nope.
a woman that has a dog or a cat, or oh, it's my fur baby, oh, it's my child, it's like shut up, go
It's a
get
little
knocked
creepy,
up.
honestly. It's
Yeah,
very
go
creepy.
get knocked up and like be useful.
That's like one of my biggest pet peeves. I hate it so
Yeah,
much because like it's clearly their maternal instinct in like the wrong like it's a
Yes,
square peg in a round hole. I
yes,
hate it.
and it's also a tell that some man hasn't just like dicked them down and taken care of the
Exactly. Yeah.
problem. Yeah, 100%.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Like someone needs to just pick them up and like
No,
take them off and
I
run
would
away with them.
outlaw certain dog breeds. Like if the dog is too cute, I would like ban it. I would have a eugenics program to make dogs into just security. I would 100%. Like you wouldn't be able to own like a Chihuahua in my America. It would be like, no, we're going to have only pit bulls in this neighborhood. Like
I
that's how
don't
it's
know
going
about
to
all
be.
that.
I don't know with the pit bulls. I don't know. People don't care of them and take care of them, and the little kids get injured by it. I don't know. It's just
Sounds like
yeah.
you want to just put all the pit bulls in one
It
neighborhood.
sounds like a eugenics program to me. Boxing. Yeah.
Fair
To
enough.
concentrate the pit bulls in one neighborhood is what it
One
sounds
neighborhood. We'll see who wins, the pit bulls or the people living in the neighborhood.
Well, I guess we would have to make it illegal for them to give it up, and
We
they'd
have
have to
to
take
have
care of it.
a dog race for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, like I would do it like Hunger Games style, where if somebody came out of the pit bull neighborhood and like they were like they were a serious player, you would have to respect them, right? Like they literally since they were a little kid fought pit bulls.
Well, the rap community would consider them the grand champ. You know what I mean?
Do you
That's
think
right.
there's any women who fight dogs?
No.
No way.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, the problem that I have with the pit bulls is that you're right. They give them the shelters, and then they have all these like, suburban white people that have to. Oh, they're cute, and then they take them into their neighborhood, and they've been abused, and then they bit these kids. So, I don't know.
Yeah, the pit bull is a breed that needs to kind of die out. And I mean, I know they're good dogs, some of them, but they were bred to fight, and people are going to use them to do that.
Yeah.
But you do need to keep a good breed of just like catch dog around, especially in the South, and now more spreading out into the West, because feral hogs are a problem,
I'm a
and we
Siberian
don't all have
Husky. I'm
our
a Siberian
AR-15s
Husky
handy.
fan. I am a German Shepherd fan.
Really, you prefer
I
the
mean,
husky over the
a
Malamute?
husky's not gonna rip a hog's face off, but
No,
you got
but
to
you
keep
don't
the
for hogs.
doggo
No.
Argentinos around, if you know
You
what
need
those
like a
are.
proper
So
shotgun to take
FD,
care of
you're
the hog.
saying that pit bulls are good at killing hogs?
No,
No,
not
pit bull
pit
mixes
bulls,
are
but I'm
good at
just
killing
saying we need to
stuff.
keep like good catch
I think
breeds
Zach's just
around.
getting defensive now.
American bullies, doggo Argentinos, things of that nature,
No.
Yeah.
which
What you need to do is you need to do what I
are
did.
really just super pit bulls.
My first week of moving to Texas, you get your Benelli M4 shotgun and your flip flops, and you go out and you shoot a bunch of hogs, and it's like kind of the most fun you can have in flip flops, gunning things down with your shotgun. I mean,
It
that's
is.
how it's supposed to be done. We don't need
That
dogs to do that. We need just
Well,
rainbows and
Charles,
Benelli
there's
M4s.
more. You can't watch your fields all the time, and they come through. So I get what he's saying by having a dog fended off to scare it off. They won't come around an aggressive dog.
I had one of the those Razorback hogs nick me one time. Motherfucker's hurt. Like there's no doubt about that. But you let them charge you, and as they go past you, you hit them in the side with a shotgun. It's not a big deal.
Do you know that they in Texas they have two weird ways of hunting hogs? One is with a helicopter and a machine gun, and another one they have like these little gully systems on this guy's land, and you can go spear hunting them, and you can take a Bowie knife and stab it in its fucking skull. I know a kid that did it. He hunted. He
I mean,
hunted.
there's a number of places in Texas where you let them charge you, and then you kill them. Like it's like when you're in bullfighting or whatever. It's like there's a
Oh
lot of people
shit!
that like that shit. Yeah, I mean, I did
Well, I mean,
that.
if you're simply interested in the extermination factor, the way a lot of people do it now is they set up a little pen with a trap door,
That's
and they
right.
wait till there's like 30, 40 inside and close it, and then you just show up with a gun and off them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Damn.
that's a lot of fun. I did that with a friend of mine one time. That's a lot of fun.
I wouldn't mind killing
Not
a hog.
funner than running them down with dogs.
Yeah, I think it's much more fun to just trap them all and just gun them down. It's much more fun.
I had this girl call me out to a mansion at midnight, and I thought she's giving me a booty call. She's like, "I think there are aliens outside my house," and I'm like,
They're fucking loud at night too.
"Yeah, well, they were
Really
all
are.
breeding, like they were
Yeah,
having a pig orgy back there." And I'm
100%.
and I'm like, "You mean to tell me that you called me out here for this? Like, what the fuck, you know?"
No, it's weird. Like there are parts of Texas where, like, if you hear them at night fucking, it's like kind of one of the more disturbing sounds you can have. And I went with a buddy of mine. My buddy like had forget what caliber gun that was, but he had like he had like the night vision scope and all of this shit, and so he was hearing them all fuck, and he like gunned them down while they were fucking, and I was just thinking, I was like horrified, like this is why I stopped shooting hogs, is I was just thinking to myself, like if I was ever fucking and somebody just like wasted my ass, you know what I mean? So I could
A
never.
lot of religions think we reincarnate into pigs and dogs and
I don't
cats.
know about any of that, but I will
But
just
that's
tell
why
you
they
that
don't eat them. That's why they
the
won't eat.
sound of it, the sound of them while they were fucking getting mowed down,
Their
like really
throes of
bothered me.
death.
It bothered me, like hearing them like basically yelp and scream as they were getting mowed down.
Is it worse than like a
intelligent
cat
animals.
fight? Is it worse than a raccoon fight or something like that?
No, it's just like the sound of it is like rough.
It's a
rough to
squeal.
hear.
It's a
The
squeal.
squeal of it. Yeah, because it kind of sounds like a person in a weird way. Like I
Yeah,
don't know.
Like a death
they
They
have a
metal
are
really,
party.
like people, man. Biologically, in a lot of ways,
I
we're
don't.
similar
They have
to
a
them.
they have a developed nervous system. I don't know if they're like
We're
people, but
closer to the apes, Delta.
yeah.
Well, I know, but I'm saying you can use
Whoa.
skin from a hog on a person and it'll
Speak for
graft.
yourself. Speak for yourself. Just kidding.
Well,
No, you're
they
right.
say
Though.
they're intelligent, that they're the most intelligent barnyard animal,
Well,
They are
yeah.
pretty
So the
sharp.
Germans
I'm
would
not
have
gonna
you
lie about
believe.
that. And what was weird to me is I went to Texas and I was like, oh, I'll just kill them all and I'll ingratiate myself with the local rednecks by killing them. But it is like if you kill a bunch of hogs, like it does change a man. You know what I mean? Like and like I had one is like I think this was like week 2 of being in Texas, and one of the hogs like was charging at me and it nicked me right in the thigh, and so I have this weird looking scar that looks like I like a paintbrush or something came across and just like tapped me. You know what I mean? Like did
Yeah.
like a flourish from my thigh. And I see it all the time, and I think about like how angry I was and how bloodlusty I was for that, and then how I gunned down this poor animal. And I don't know, like it was fun, but I think it's like one of those things where I think if you did it too much, it would severely fuck you up.
You have a little reminder of
Have you
the
finished
side.
one with a knife, Charles?
I have finished one with a knife, and
Oh boy.
that's a little different to be honest with you, because usually they're like, kind of like bleeding out and everything, and that's like a different kind of feel. What I'm talking about though is like when they're doing something fun and they're with their friends, like when they're all fucking and doing the pig orgy, and then you gun them down, and you hear them screaming, like that definitely changes
That's
you.
how I want to
You
go.
know, like
You traumatize their fellow pigs
If
for
anybody
life.
wants to murder me, just gun me down in an orgy, because that's how I want to go.
I don't know.
The pigs
I
of
don't know,
Texas
man.
probably have a secret plot to have a revolution
So,
and exterminate all the humans.
okay, so Charles, what type of person though? Like, because you're right. Like, I could, but what type of person can do this and have not feel remorse? Is it just numb people,
A
less intelligent
Texan.
people? Yeah.
Farmers will do it in an instant without
No,
feeling.
there's a number of people that kind of grow up doing it. Like, so I wasn't like raised in redneck pursuits. So, like, if my daddy or granddaddy or whatever, it's like what they do. Like, I basically just showed up in Texas and I was like, I'm here for the low taxes and the escape from my ex-wife.
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to kill to be one of you guys? And they're
I
I
like,
mean,
come with
imagine
Foxing,
us.
you're.
if you
They're
come
like, come
from
with us, young
generations
man.
of people that have never lived in a city, you'll have no problem doing it.
Yeah, if you're
Yeah.
inculcated in it for a while, I imagine
Yeah,
you're
so
probably
I would
pretty
go
numb
like
to
I
it.
had my local redneck and your local 4-wheel drive vehicles, and you did you do your like your redneck pursuits, and you do all that, and it's fun, it's whatever. But I do think that if you're the type of person that like throws yourself into that and you're not of it, like it will change you and make you like a worse off person. And I remember just like going to Walmart after we like killed a bunch of these hogs. And I remember just like looking at all the people and thinking like, oh, they kind of all look like pigs. You know what I mean? Like it was just like a kind of
They're just
stray
standing there
thought.
all innocently.
Yeah, it was just like a stray thought, and I was like, oh, this is like how people become like serial killers, or like this is how that happens. You know what I mean? And I sort of was like freaked out by it and never went hunting again.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two things. Like the pigs. It's my brother, kind of, who was like an engineer, worked on like a farm or whatever, and I saw him the processing of pigs and cows, those type of things, and those are the two animals. Just because of, I don't know, whatever it is, because I didn't grow up on a farm, that kind of make me think twice. Chickens, I don't give a shit. I don't know. Chickens, I have no remorse, but the pigs and the cows are a little more.
Yeah, they're satanic.
I don't
There's
eat
a
pigs.
Malian
I
sympathy
don't eat
there.
pigs anymore because of that orgy, the orgy, gutting them down in the orgy thing.
What?
Yeah,
You
but
don't have like bacon or
boxing,
anything?
you have to butcher chickens in a certain kosher way, though.
I don't do
Yeah,
it.
you do. Yeah, you do.
How would
I
you do
don't.
that,
No.
Zach?
Not with
What is
chickens.
that
Not with
called?
chickens.
Is
Not with
there
I
a
chickens.
don't kill the hog.
Yeah, boxing. Isn't there like a practice?
It's with beef, and honestly,
No,
especially with
wait a minute. There's
what
like
do
a
what are you talking
ritual.
No.
about?
I'm saying to you
Chickens?
is I don't fuck with pig anymore because I watched Pulp Fiction after we gun them all down, and I also felt like bad about gutting people down in an orgy. You know what I mean? And gutting down pigs in an orgy.
Oh, this was
And
pre-Pulp Fiction.
all right,
Zach,
Zach,
what were you asking?
I was
I'll
asking
answer.
boxing. I can't remember, but
It's a
I
way.
have a Jewish friend who sort of like laughs at a lot of these rituals and is like, it's so annoying that my mom's speaking more Yiddish as she gets older. Like, please stop doing that. And he was always like bring up these things and say like the weird rituals relating to like
Yeah, I mean,
kosher practices. I can't
so
remember what it's
yeah.
called,
So
but like
there's
it
one.
involves a chicken.
Parv
Is
and
it
non-parv.
No, no,
is
no,
it
no.
something like
So
Kaport
so
or
it
something?
has to do with Yom Kippur. For this is a
Yes,
Ah,
yeah.
yes.
So some of the Orthodox. This is
interesting.
again. I've never seen this. Like
Name, what
this
did
is
you say it was called?
well, it's during Yom Kippur. I forgot the actual ritual, but ultra Orthodox Jews now it's just done with like
And look this up.
they do something with the chicken and whatever, and they put the sins in it. But it's like I don't think it really exists over here. Definitely in Israel, some of the sects of some of the religious people. But the one thing I will say is that the killing of the kosher cows, historically speaking, I guess it was the best way to slitting the throat. But like, I don't understand. Like, if we have like the technology to like piff the brain out, which is obviously less suffering, like why, religiously speaking, is that less cruel? Like, it's I don't know. That's a weird one because obviously the technology wasn't around when those laws were written. So I don't know. That's kind of a weird one that a lot of Jews hold on to.
Boxing. Do you know about kind of the liberal Jewish tradition of putting the orange on the Seder
Oh yes,
plate?
it's yeah, that's a little. It's called Eve's orange, and it represents all the women that weren't represented in the Bible. It's a very liberal. Yeah, it's called
But
Eve's orange.
apparently now it's been like expanded to include gay people too, like the
I
entire
I personally haven't.
rainbow.
Yeah, see, I personally haven't seen that. Like, as the Jewish people that I know, like what they're like me, they're like like I don't know, like most of my family is like Republican, and like they would, but I that does exist, but um, I have never seen it on the Seder plate or like whatever like
All
that.
right,
But
I looked it up. The Yom Kippur ritual is a customary atonement ritual called kaparat. It's a practice where they either give money that's waved or a chicken is waved over the head and slaughtered.
yeah, and
And
they put the
according to
sins in the
halal
chicken.
rules.
Yeah, they put the chins in the
How
What
Like
disgusting
the
is
fuck
Zelda.
is up with your people
the fuck
boxing?
is that?
I mean, listen,
It's like
Charles,
swung. I'm looking at a
It's like
video.
Ocarina of Time.
I'm
They don't
critical.
do
Listen,
that
it's
out in the U.S., do they?
I've never seen it or heard about anybody do that. I really
My
haven't.
God.
I mean, to be
I
honest, like
can't believe, like, don't you think PETA would be like all over that?
they
No,
should.
that's kind of an uphill battle, don't you
But
think?
it's not done. It's not done unless in the ultra orthodox, and even in Israel, it's only done with the ultra orthodox. It's a weird one. I don't know. Like it's just yeah, I disavow it. I guess. But you eat it.
I'm
You
glad to
eat it
hear that's
anyway, though.
boxing. Thank you.
I mean, we eat the meat. We eat the food anyway. I mean, if you break the neck pretty quickly, it's not really a big deal. But I still think it's kind of. I don't know. I don't know what the word is, but I don't do it.
Disgusting.
Not primitive, but
Yeah, in
yeah.
general, I think like
Yeah.
occasionally, like I'm cooking a chicken and I look at it and I go, "God bless you, chicken. Thank God for you." And I
Zach, shut the fuck up. You don't do that shit.
Well, I mean, we all know that the real thing is to drink a Gentile's blood, right? I mean, that's
Oh
the
yes.
real delicacy. Yeah, that's the good stuff right there.
Yeah, that's the top shelf, right?
Yeah, after you eat their foreskin, right? Like that's the.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's
the hors d'oeuvre, yeah.
By the way, those are jokes. Just FYI,
no, I
like
mean,
I don't actually believe the Jews do that. No, but there are people in here who are like legit crazy.
yeah,
Who
I
will
know. I
think
mean,
that I
listen,
actually believe that.
I mean, Zach knows me enough that I like the jokes and the stuff. Like, I've never, but I'm also like, people are fucking. you're right. They listen to you and they, oh, Charles said this, and I don't care about the people who are offended by it. I care about the people who actually believe it.
There's nothing worse than when you have a perfectly great joke and then people take it very seriously, and you're like, "Oh, you motherfucker!
Nah, that's my favorite thing
You
actually. When they're
stole
like,
my joke."
you know, when people are like, "Wait, what?" Like they're confused at your joke. That's like a compliment to me.
All right, so
Well, I have this theory that the freest people in our society are people in comedy clubs, and
Yeah,
that basically like people hate them but also love them for their freedom.
I
for
And
mean,
sure.
yeah,
yeah.
so my basic this is like why we allow like a Dave Chappelle, like they're basically allowed to like talk about serious things, whereas our politicians are not allowed to talk about serious things. And I was thinking about that in the context of like they had like Anna Paulina Luna and Lauren Boebert with Dave Chappelle, right? Like they took a selfie the other week or whatever. And it's like all the politicians want to be comedians and all the comedians want to be politicians. And I think a society that actually has comedians wanting to be politicians is healthier than a politicians, wanting to be comedians society.
But Charles, but there's limitations. Like, so okay, so you could Dave Chappelle, yes, he gets away with the stuff, but yeah, try a white guy get it making black jokes, even still, and there's still limitations of comedic
Oh, I don't think
ability.
white people are. I don't think white people are free in that sense. No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
But that's kind of the deal, right? Like that's the deal that the white, power structure gives to a Chappelle, right? And that's kind of like what makes the system less violent. Is we're like, okay, this guy's like sharp, he's cool, he like makes good jokes. Like let's have him be the avatar of this kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Chuck, to your point about like the non-laughter, like I've done a bunch of open mics and some feature sets, but like when I have people in the crowd that like where it's dead silent, I have like maybe one guy in the back who's dying laughing. I prefer that more than like a crowd of people who are like smattering in laughter, where it's like that guy's gonna come back and see me because I'm not aligning with what everyone else says. And if
Yeah,
you
I
do
mean,
that
I think
over and
I
over and
think a lot
over,
of life is actually just finding your crowd. And my father used to say all the time, like, if you have a business where 99% of the planet hates you, but 1% loves you, you're going to be super wealthy. And I think people don't really understand, like, just like it's all about finding your market in life.
yeah, and you've been to comedy clubs, as I imagine, and you see people try to like go along with the crowd and
To
be
be honest with
funny,
you,
but
I'm
like
not a huge
they,
comedy club fan just because
yeah.
the types of people that go to them I find obnoxious. So
But
I
I
don't
mean, the
mind
point
I
I
don't mind
wanted to make
watching
is,
people's specials. I have a friend that's a fairly well-known comedian, and I edit some of her jokes. I don't know if I'm doxing her. Whatever. I edit her some of her joke, and like I like to like write the jokes with her, and like that's kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like I'm more into that level of like she'll call me up and we'll like try out the material than I
I
am.
I don't want to dox her either. I think I saw one that you might have posted on Twitter, and I might have replied, and I don't know. It was in her special, but anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely no doxing.
I had to be careful about
Yeah.
the female
Okay.
comedians that I know. Let's just
Anyway,
keep
I
it.
just wanted to.
Let's
The
keep it
reason I
low
brought it
key
up
on
is
that.
because,
Yeah,
like,
let's not get me in trouble with the female
sure,
comedians because
no, of
I
course.
like taking them out on dates. Like they're fun. So
the
don't.
It's
reason
Sarah
the reason I brought
Silverman,
it up
isn't it?
Of
The reason I
course.
brought it up
How'd
is
you know?
because, like, when I do open mics and stuff, I see all these other people going up and saying things that won't get them like booed or like kicked out of the room. They just want to like flow with everybody else. But then, like, the one person who kind of goes against that wave is like the guy that gets the return customers, like, and over time develops the crowd and like gets a following. You're not actually like kowtowing to people that are just there to like be popular. You're
What I
like
like to
developing this
do
following.
is I like to write a really seditious joke for a woman. Like that's the kind of thing that I like to do. Or like I like to write like a really like anti-white joke and give it to a black comedian friend of mine just to see what will happen. Like that so when I think about writing jokes or doing that kind of stuff, I think about the person and like, oh, this is a very good weapon for so and so. That's like what I spend a lot of my time thinking about. So it's like the power of like giving somebody like there's a female comedian that was on Netflix recently who's a friend of mine, and I handed
Can I
her.
DM you a name and you tell me yes or no?
You can DM me a name, but I won't necessarily tell you.
Okay.
I'll be curious to see if you can figure it out because I'll be actually quite impressed.
I don't think it was Netflix, but anyway.
Hannah Gatsby. I got it.
No comment. Basically,
No,
my
she's on the joke.
Instagram, I have a lot of comedians that I follow that follow me and whatever. But yeah, so I gave this woman this really fucking killer joke that she tried out on her special, and it really, really worked. And it was extremely attractive to watch her do that. But it was more important that like people were quoting that joke elsewhere, like talking about her special. And I was like, all right, this is fun because the comedians, like the politicians, they have the real power in our society. They can like frame things in certain ways. And so anyway, I like all that stuff.
Yeah, I think they used to, but Charles, you got to. I was going to say this earlier, but like, what's his name? Current, like he wavered me from this, but like, all right, this is the premise of this joke, and it's funny, and it's not because they were talking about the movie The 12 Years of Slave, which I know you've seen, right? So there's this scene where Michael Fassbender is raping the slave, and all I could think about when I saw that is like, because they're actors and whatever. I just like wanted to stand up and like say like this is unrealistic because she was crying. I don't know. I thought that concept was funny. I know.
I don't know that
it's I don't know.
You have to be there.
It's a tough one to workshop, Boxing. Tough one to workshop.
It was the idea of it was funny in my mind, but I don't know.
I treat joke writing like haiku writing or like poetry writing, where you take away words and you have to like write in a certain number of syllables. It's like you have to get like the rhythmic timing of it correct. So most people try to do elaborate stories, and like that shit doesn't work. You have to like be extremely disciplined. And the best comedians I've met, they are like they're like in total control of their body, their facial expressions, their eyebrows, their like how they move on the stage. So you have to like it's almost like a choreography more than it's like an actual, at that level that's what's going on.
Yeah, and you pay attention a lot to like the negative space too. Like it's not necessarily what you say. Sometimes it's what you don't say, and like you can say less while saying more at the same time.
I mean, I saw Shane Gillis that is a special in DC area. He's a really good comic. He's the negative space, but I also think that the best like quick joke writer, like Dave Attell, I think is a really good like not Dave Chappelle, Dave Attell.
At the highest levels of joke writing, you'll learn that basically like there's like a whole underground joke world that is like where people just like to fuck with each other, and there's like a lot of like there's like this person that I know, and she will write like jokes, and I will write, and we'll try to figure out each other's jokes for different people that we know, and that's kind of fun. Like there's a lot of that goes on.
Insomniac with Dave Attell was some of the best man on the street work ever, though. That stuff
I used to sneak downstairs and watch that after my parents went to bed. That show was so funny.
Yeah, but he says things that are like kind of plain, but like the way he says it is like it's like subtle differences of like I don't know. I mean, it's very good. But here's the thing, Charles. I think that comedians have like if you look at like the younger generation, I don't think they have as much influence on people like they used to. Like I mean, as much as like I despise Jon Stewart,
it's definitely oversaturated. That's for sure true. And there's a lot more of like people who are pretty doing it than people who are like genuinely depressed and fucked up. Like I like it because it's like a form of art. It's like a discipline. Like writing is a discipline. And I like I always have a pen and pencil and paper with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And like I like that like way of concentrating your mind and like writing jokes. But the problem I have with a lot of people now is they all try to be celebrities or they're like very managed and manicured. So I like I like a lot of like weird chick comics who are like a lot of fun. Yeah, who are like, and like it's very fun to go out with one of them, like in New York or whatever.
The issue that I have.
You trying to say you listened to Red Scare, Charles?
I have no comments about any of that.
The issue that
no
I have.
Comments. By the way, that you never talk about the female comics. You always are vague about it. You can never say that there's no point. Like you can't know.
But Charles, the issue that I have with female comics is that it's just a lot of it always centers around their vagina, and it's just not creative to me.
No, it depends on the woman. It depends on the like you need the ones that are fucked up with their dads. Like those are the fun ones. And because the whole point of giving them a joke is to like have the joke work and then have them like go out with you afterwards. That's the whole point. Like that's like the joy of it. It's not
All right.
really about it's
Your,
about
your spectrum's different than me as a
no,
comedy show
you're a
viewer or viewer on
consumer of
TV.
it. I don't really like to consume all that much of it because a lot of it's actually really bad. You know, there's a lot of really bad stuff out there.
It's mostly bad.
Yeah.
Mostly bad.
Everybody thinks
Charles, were you a fan
there's
of
way too much
fellow
self-confidence.
Bostonian?
There's way too much self-confidence in this country. Like we need to go back to people being like embarrassed to grab a mic or to feel like they didn't earn it. Like we need to go back to that world. You know,
There's a few good. I know FDM. I know who you're about to say. I know Nick DiPaolo. Is that who you're about to say?
I was going to say Patrice O'Neill, but I mean,
Oh yeah.
Boston has
Patrice
produced
O'Neill is
a number of great comics.
Patrice O'Neill is the master when it comes to like the basically the riffing black man. He gets that like 100% correct. But that's
Chuck,
not
Chuck, how do you feel about Greg Giraldo? Did you like him?
okay. You
Yeah.
know, I don't like a lot of these male comics. Like that's not really my thing. I like the weird people, like the ones that are like actual personalities. That those are the people that I like. I don't like. There's a lot of like. I like pretty fucked up people doing comedy. There's way too many happy people doing comedy.
Well, Greg Giraldo was like miserable. Like I don't know if you ever seen that clip
Yeah,
of him
but
on
he's a
Tough
little
Crowd, like
too. He's a little
against
too much that way.
like Dennis Leary when he was on there, and he was
I
like
like Dennis Leary.
they were talking about there's a clip on my Twitter, I'll put it in the Jumbotron, but they were talking about like I think Korea, like North Korea or whatever, and the war, and they were like Dennis Leary was like, oh, there's a way to solve a problem with a country that's got weapons pointed at us and we hate them. It's like, I don't think so. And then Greg Jarrell was like, oh yeah, like Russia, for example, that big Russian war, and like just kept going on. It was so funny. And he did a joke about like how, oh well, there's some economic benefits, like, you know, I heard North Korea will stop making nukes if American women agree to get their nails done at least twice a week. Like just random shit like that.
I had ice cream with
I gotta
Dennis
go.
Leary once. Very weird story, but
That's funny. I don't know what that means really. Like, how did you
it was
get
on
ice
a
cream?
church biking trip that I was on when I was like 13, and we were biking around the Northeast for a week. And at one of these stops, we were hosted by the Leary family, and we swam in their pool, and they served us all ice cream. It was very, very strange.
All right. Well, what do you guys think? Should we close the space?
Yeah, it's probably about that time.
I think so. All right, everyone. Good times. Interesting. And, you know, maybe I'll open one this weekend. Take it
Yeah,
easy.
for the record, I wasn't molested by Dennis Leary, but good night, everyone.
Good to know. Let's get that on the record. All right, FTM.
Good night,
All
Zach.
right. Take care, everyone. See you.